On this episode of the Girl Talk podcast,
when I think back on the times in my life, the seasons in my life when I had that connection with God, it was when I was going through the hardest times because I knew so clearly how much I needed Him.
Hello there. You're listening to the Girl Talk podcast. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
My name's Trisha.
We are so glad you are here today. Are you satisfied? That's an interesting question. I'm going to go one step further. Are you satisfied in God? Totally different facet to that question. That's what we're going to be diving into today. So we're glad you are here for this discussion. I want to ask you two gals, just to get us started here. Have you ever felt like you were satisfied in God?
Can we talk about what that means first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
What does it mean to be satisfied in God?
Okay.
That was a question.
Oh, okay.
What do you think? Okay.
You wanted to talk
I'm
about
waiting
it, so-
for you all to lay some wisdom down
Right.
for me because
What
I've
does
had
that
this
look
question
like?
too.
Yeah, what does it look like to be satisfied in God? Does it look like content? I mean, does it look like, I don't know. What does it look like?
I mean, I think for me, we have to stop. We have to stop with the question, what does it look like? Because I think everybody can look satisfied in God, and they're not necessarily satisfied in God. You know what I'm saying? And I think we place way too much emphasis on how things look, especially in Christian culture. And so when people's lives fall apart, we're like, we thought they had it all together because look at them, look at their Instagram reels. They look, But I think when I think of satisfaction in God, I think of contentment. I think of peace. And oddly enough, when I ask that question, have you ever been satisfied in God? When I think back of times when I've been the most satisfied in God, it's been the time of greatest heartache for me.
Wow.
I agree with
Wow.
that.
Because
I agree.
there were,
Yeah.
I had a season of my life where I felt like God kicked out every crutch that I ever thought I had. And I literally had Him. Yeah. And nothing else. Yeah. And in that time, I found out that He is enough. I learned so many lessons during that time, but I can truly say I was satisfied in God during that time because I had nothing else. For me, He had to kick all those crutches out of the way and bring me down to the absolute bottom, the lowest place for me, to where I would look up and say, oh, you are enough. Yeah. So I am grateful for that experience, but I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy because it was a heart-shattering time in my life. But I was totally satisfied in God. And through that season, learned a lot of things about God that I wouldn't have known otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's almost like, finding satisfaction in God then is almost like finding your hope in Him and Him alone. That there's no hope to be found necessarily in your job or in your family or in your circumstances or in your happiness, but that true peace, joy comes from Him and Him alone. That there's hope to be found when you're just relying on Him, and it's not Jesus plus something else. It's not Jesus plus, oh, my husband is the best husband ever, or Jesus plus my job brings me such fulfillment. No, it's Jesus.
Yeah.
And then all those other things are His great blessings, but it's just Jesus. And that's where I find my satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
When I think about satisfaction or what it means to be satisfied, I think about food. And when you have had a wonderful meal and you are completely full and you don't want any more, you don't need any more, you're satisfied, you can push back from the table. And that's what I want, is to feel that time of completion, fullness in my relationship with God. And I have been trying to figure this out because I know that I have continued to look at other things for my satisfaction. One time I can pinpoint where I do feel that satisfaction is in times of worship, especially like my church, corporate worship. We're singing a song. I'm praising God. I'm connected. I'm all there. I'm not distracted. I'm not thinking of the things I've got to do. I'm praising God in that moment. I can almost picture Jesus, that I'm singing to Him. And that is when I have felt that complete satisfaction in God. But I constantly think it's going to be found in this thing or that thing, a little bit of Jesus and then these other things as well. But like Carol, when I think back on the times in my life, the seasons in my life when I had that connection with God, it was when I was going through the hardest times because I knew so clearly how much I needed him and I was leaning on him completely. I wasn't doing that and then trying to go get a little hit off a tennis match or, a good Facebook post. I was just leaning on him. And that is when that satisfaction was when I had that experience. But it's so hard because the world is constantly pushing us in other directions to find our satisfaction.
Well, and I love that picture of worship. That really speaks to me because that's that to me too is the times when I felt the most connected to him, the most satisfied. I heard somebody say, I think it was Louis Giglio one time said, you can't have worship and worry in the same time. And so if you're worshiping, all the other stuff just goes away and you don't need the Jesus plus, my good job or Jesus plus a great husband or kids that behave or whatever.
Yeah. J.D. Greer says in his book, The Gospel, he says that when we're dissatisfied, it's because we've lost sight of the true gospel.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of boiled it down into one sentence for me and something that I've been trying to apply in my life because I'll get irritated or frustrated with something and I'll think, why am I irritated right now? Why am I frustrated right now? It's because I've taken my eyes off the gospel and put them on something else. And I think you're right, Tricia. The world is constantly trying to distract us with money, position, power, fame, all the things. And once we turn our head, man, it's on. And that's why I love that Jesus wants a relationship with us because it's just like any other relationship. You just got to keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it. Now, most of us in our humanness will say, if there's somebody who just always asks me for things, I will avoid them. I will hide from them in the grocery store and I will change my phone number. But Jesus is not that way. Yeah. He is constantly wooing us back to himself.
Yeah.
And so the fact that J.D. Greer, boiled it down so well and said that when we're dissatisfied, it's because we've forgotten the gospel, the true gospel. I was like, yes, that's a good reminder for me. So,
that reminds me of Paul. I think in one of his letters, he said something about it. We count it all joy to face trials of all kinds because trials produce perseverance, perseverance, character, hope.
Yeah.
I just think I left something out in there somewhere.
I get the idea, though. It's true.
But that's what I hear y'all saying is that when we have the trials, when we have the times where it's the hardest, that's really when we can experience the most joy in the Lord. And that's opposite of what the world says. Right. The world says you're going to find that joy equals happiness, which joy does not equal happiness.
No, that's correct.
Joy really equals kind of satisfaction in the Lord. And that when we have trials, we'll find the joy in him.
So let me ask you this question, because as I was preparing, I also, looked up, I was going through scriptures about satisfaction and how the psalmist puts it in Psalm 90. He said, satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Is the reason for dissatisfaction, so kind of looking at it backwards, is the reason for dissatisfaction failed love?
Failed love meaning we don't accept the love.
We don't accept for love, or we look for it in other places.
It's misplaced. Misplaced love. Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
That's good.
That's the short answer.
For me, I have got to make things incredibly practical, and so sometimes I will read scripture and I'll ask myself the reverse.
I want to. Can you read that scripture again?
Yes, Psalm 90. That's my question. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days.
That I love that. And I love that it connects so beautifully to what Tricia said earlier about worship. That the overflow of that joy is singing. Sorry, that was great.
Yeah.
I love that psalm.
I do too. I love that. And God's love is unfailing. And so if we're not getting it, it's because we're not opening ourselves to it. And for me, it's just trying to be available for his presence. His presence is always there. He's waiting for us. But when we open ourselves up to that, to his presence, that's when we sense that love, and that's when that contentment and that satisfaction comes in. And I think that's why worship is so powerful, because it says when we worship God, he's in our midst. He's in our presence. He inhabits the worship of his people. Yeah. So opening the door to that presence is through worship, I think.
And I think one of the other things that psalm also said is that every morning.
Yeah.
Which means I got to come back to you every single morning and be filled back up with the joy of the Lord and his faithfulness and satisfaction in him alone. That it's not manna for today and tomorrow. It's manna for today.
Yeah. He'll give us exactly what he needs for the battles we'll face today. Yeah.
That's right. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and ask for the same thing. And if I start with worship and worship you again tomorrow, then I'll be filled back up. And, then it'll be, my life will be the overflow of the worship in my life and the joy in my life.
So maybe we've come full circle. And this verse in Psalm 90 has brought us there. It's a daily thing. And that if we are truly satisfied in God, he'll give us what we need for that day. It comes through worship. But here's the thing. It talks about mourning, and then it says that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. So if we come in the morning and get what we need every morning, be glad all our days. That to me, I was like reading that and I was like, oh, wow, we start in the morning and then we end up in all our days. And that tells me that I can't skip a day.
Right. It also says to me, it also says to me that it's cumulative. That we start with one day and we get enough for the day. Yeah. Well, when we come back tomorrow, we get enough for the day, but we probably start at a higher level of worship. And a higher level of joy and satisfaction. The more we do it, the more it becomes a habit, the more we're just filled with joy all our days. Yeah. We come back to him in worship. We come back to him to get refilled up, but we also are just living from a place of joy because it's become our habit.
Right.
Well, that makes me think about all of my relationships. Let's say you have a friend that you are either in school with or you work with, and you see them all the time, and you're always talking about things. And then they have a different job. You don't see them as much. How's that relationship going? It's not growing. It sort of stops. So the more we experience God, the more we relate to him. That's how all relationships grow. Also, our relationship with Jesus, God the Father. You have to you spend the time together. It's time, it's sharing, it's your heart, it's a relationship. So that's what I like to think about it. Like just any relationship. If I have date nights with my husband, it's going to go better. Yeah, our relationship's going to be stronger. Right. And then if he makes me upset about something, I've got all this bank. Right. Right. So relationships are so powerful, and they teach us about how we relate to God.
And I also think about the verse that you mentioned earlier, count it all joy when you face trials of many kinds, for testing your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. So we go all the way back to that verse, and you're talking about the higher level. I think it's part of the maturity level. Where I think as we mature in our faith, when we come to worship, a lot of times this old girl comes to worship with a list full of demands, if I'm honest, things I want God to do. But as you grow in your relationship with God and you see the things that come your way in life, he's going to see you through, and you just start to worship him because you've persevered through a couple of those things in the past, and your faith is growing, and it's less about presenting him with a list of things he needs to do and worshiping him for who he is, because he'll take care of those things, right? Yes. Not that we can't ask, because we certainly can, but I think my prayer life has changed through the years in that I don't always come with a list of, like, God, here are the things I want you to do today. I think that's why it's so powerful. Every prayer program that I've ever studied in my life has had some sense of praise or adoration at the beginning. And I think that's why, because as we mature in our faith, we realize it's less about what we need and more about God is what we need.
That's right.
Seek first the kingdom of God and
Right.
his righteousness, and then all of these things will be given unto you.
Yep. He is the answer to all the things.
Yes, all the things.
Right. And the satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's where we really find our satisfaction is in him and him alone, not him plus anything else.
And I want you to put legs to that, because I think we can say this all day long, and we could like put it on a poster in our offices and still not get there, and still like know we should be satisfied in God, but we aren't sure how. So we've uncovered a couple of different things. Worship is one. Spending time with him on that relationship's another. Going every day and just saying, God, my cup's empty. I need you to fill this up so I'll have what I need. Because I want to sing for joy and be glad all of my days. But it starts with a consistent relationship with him and coming to him in worship and finding out who he is, because he is enough.
He's enough.
And he is where you're going to find your satisfaction. If we can pray for you, if we can encourage you in any way, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can always email us at girltalk@thelightfm.org. That comes straight to us. We see it. We do the little happy dance, and then we will answer you back. We promise to do that. And you can get in touch on the Facebook pages, public page, the girlfriends page. Whatever the case, we want to hear from you. What do you think? And when have you found satisfaction in God? That's the life we want for you.
That's right.
We want you to live that life, and we want to live it too. We're right here doing it with you. So get in touch any way you'd like. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next time we gather around these microphones for the next Girl Talk podcast.